The president has threatened to get rid of NAFTA before, but now a preliminary trade deal between the U.S. and Mexico has ratcheted up the pressure on Canada and made that possibility real. The U.S. president says a trilateral arrangement is possible, but not without major concessions from Canada. Katie Simpson takes a look at that deal and what happens next.
The president is on the phone.
In a sign of how quickly it all came together.
Okay. Yeah, you can hook him up. You tell me when.
Donald Trump hastily announced the breakthrough, with Mexico's president joining in by speakerphone.
We're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. We'll get rid of the name NAFTA. It has a bad connotation.
Trump says he's ready to kill the original NAFTA in favor of this new deal, and it will be up to Canada to join that pact.
If they'd like to negotiate fairly, we'll do that. You know, they have tariffs of almost 300% on some of our dairy products, so we can't have that. We're not going to stand for that. I think with Canada, frankly, the easiest thing we can do is to tariff their cars coming in.
The preliminary agreement changes rules for the auto sector, mostly by raising wage and labor standards in Mexico. Nearly half of all vehicle content would have to be built by workers earning at least $16 an hour, and 75% of that would need to be built in either the U.S. or Mexico. The U.S. is also compromising on the sunset clause, replacing the deal-killing provision with a review.
Canada will resume negotiations tomorrow when Minister Freeland returns to Washington. We have our positions, and we will always argue our positions so that we have a good deal for Canada.
The Foreign Affairs Minister is cutting short a work trip to Europe to lead the Canadian delegation. It has been sitting on the sidelines for more than a month while the U.S. and Mexico talked through their differences.
With all our efforts, 24/7, to promote that Canada continues to be a part of these agreements.
Mexico is insisting Canada remain in the pact, but with the U.S. and Mexico already on the same page, it will likely be difficult for Canada re-entering the talks.
I think they definitely have to play catch-up. They have to play catch-up on a number of key issues.
That apparent game of catch-up is already underway. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with President Trump by phone this afternoon ahead of the restart of talks tomorrow.
Okay, so both Mexico and the U.S. are pushing to try and get a preliminary three-way deal done by Friday, which seems fast to me. What are the chances of that, Katie?
It's going to take a lot of work, Rosie. Canada right now has two real sticking points. One is the sunset clause, and we already know there's been some compromise there. The other is Canada wants a strong dispute resolution system, and it's unclear where that stands right now. But one other thing that's important to remember here is that Canada said it was sitting on the sidelines for the last 5 weeks because the U.S. and Mexico were working out bilateral issues. Clearly, these discussions have been far more broad, so Canada could be in for even more surprises when those formal talks get back underway with Canada again tomorrow.
Okay, we'll find out then. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Keep in mind the deal with Mexico isn't done yet, but during the announcement, Trump didn't really frame it that way. So let's take a closer look at some of the claims the president made from the Oval Office.
A very comprehensive agreement. So, Enrique, I will see you soon. I think we're going to have a very formal ceremony.
The president might be getting ahead of himself a bit. Trump can't just sign a deal with Mexico. NAFTA was approved by the U.S. Congress in '93, so any changes to the agreement, including the president's newest deal with Mexico, will require congressional approval. Today, many leading Republicans cautiously welcome Trump's announcement while making it clear that they won't embrace a NAFTA 2.0 that leaves out Canada.
This is one of the largest trade deals ever made, maybe the largest trade deal ever made.
Not true. NAFTA, as it currently stands, is bigger than a deal between just the U.S. and Mexico. And then there's this easily debunked claim.
As far as Canada is concerned, we haven't started with Canada yet.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Canada has been at the negotiating table ever since trade talks kicked off a year ago this month. And Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland herself has traveled extensively between Ottawa, Washington, and Mexico City.
We are actually working on cutting tariffs.
In fact, President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau have spoken at least 13 times in the last year, and they've talked about trade and NAFTA, almost everyone.
We're starting negotiations with Canada pretty much immediately. I can't tell you where those negotiations are gone. It's going to be it's a smaller segment. As you know, Mexico is a very large trading partner.
That's not true either. Canada is America's second largest trading partner, only behind China. Mexico is actually third. Last year alone, U.S. trade with Canada totaled $50 billion more than U.S. trade with Mexico. No surprise then, tens of thousands of jobs in Canada depend on NAFTA. You probably know that. So we asked Diane Buckner to check in and see how businesses here are reacting to Trump's assertion that NAFTA could be replaced.
The Armstrong family has been running this dairy farm since 1828. Nowadays, though, Philip Armstrong is well aware his industry has become a target during trade talks.
We know President Trump has kind of singled us out, even though they have a major surplus with us. They see us as the problem, even though the facts say we're not the problem. That is a big issue.
Today's announcement of an agreement between Mexico and the U.S. certainly puts pressure on Canada, and there was another threat of auto tariffs today. Flavio Volpe represents over 200 auto parts firms. He started working the phones as soon as he heard the news.
I just called to see, ask the Mexicans if what we were listening to was hard negotiating rhetoric or whether something material happened on the ground.
His contacts reassured him.
They told me they're committed to a three-party agreement and three-party negotiations, and looking forward to Canada coming back to the table.
The Auto Workers Union says it's delighted to hear that the new U.S.-Mexican agreement would guarantee higher wages for Mexican workers, an indication the U.S. wants to level the playing field.
The problem with Canada and the United States were the low wages of Mexico. So I'm a lot more comfortable today than I have been over the last 24 years, to be candid with you.
But until a comprehensive deal is done, a lot of industries could still be targeted by Trump.
I think we have to give him some kind of a win on something that he wants to give a win to.
This trade lawyer says a sacrifice will have to be made somewhere.
Canada has to find something to give Trump, right? And that's hard. The Mexicans have obviously swallowed hard to give him something on labor.
At the Armstrong family farm,
we are very concerned that we could be used as a bargaining chip. We've had 6 generations. My son has a young 1-year-old now, and we hope the opportunity is there so that in the future that he can continue to dairy farm and to farm in this community.
Canadian negotiators did give away 3% of the dairy market to get the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal done. Dairy farmers hope they don't have to take the brunt again. Diane Buckner, CBC News, Brampton, Ontario.